So recently we had went to Kenya, as you all know, and spent some time at a nice little hotel and met a group of ladies in the pool and just had a general conversation with them. They were really great. They came from the States, of course. And in that conversation, we discovered that it was a sister, two ladies, they were sisters. And then there was another lady who was, at that time, introduced to us as a friend of the family's. Now, the third lady was obviously a lesbian. She was more of identified more on the masculine side. And when she was introduced to us as a friend of the family's, she kind of had like this angry energy, and she told the one girl, "Come here." And so the sister went over there, they talked, and she came back and she said, I want to just be honest, that's my wife. And, we got to keep things quiet because, we don't know how they feel about us over here in Africa. And so because of that, we decided to actually look further into that. And is there a place for the LGBTQ community on the continent?
Greetings, peace and blessings. We are the Mohammeds, the residential tourists from 85 to Africa. We are living in the after. Welcome and thank you so much once again for allowing us these few moments of your precious time to allow us to share with you of our experience as residential tourists from right here on the mother continent, specifically from Kigali, Rwanda. As we move forward into this subject matter, we want to emphasize and stress that it is a very delicate subject matter. It's one of much seriousness, and we want to be sure that it is clear we are not presenting this in a way of condemning or judging or anything of that matter. We simply wish to shed some light on the plight of Black people as we continue to try to find a place on this earth of some level of acceptance and identity. So with that, let's get into it. Let's talk about it.
So coming from the U.S., of course, and particularly Atlanta,
Woo!
it began to feel like it was forced upon you that if you did not accept this alternative lifestyle as a regular lifestyle, then there's something wrong with you. And it felt like it was attacking those that had a particular value system and trying to make them believe differently in order to be accepted by their society. So what we are learning here, and to be honest, what we appreciate about the leadership on the continent, is that you're not going to force that on them. You're not going to force them to accept anything that goes against their values and how they run their country. So we will see in one of the videos today how in Ghana, Kamala Harris came to, was it a United Nations conference? What kind of conference was that?
I think it was just a visit. I'm not certain, but it was a visit.
Yeah, she came to Ghana to try to convince them to no longer have ties with China, to just have ties, with the U.S. And the difference between And this is what you'll hear in the video.
Madam Vice President, you have made clear that the message of this trip is centered on a collaborative future. At the same time, the Biden administration committed to calling out any foreign government that advanced anti-gay legislation or violates human rights. All three of the countries that you are visiting on this trip have advanced or proposed anti-gay legislation. Ghana has proposed a bill that would imprison those that engage in same-sex intercourse. Gay sex remains a crime in Tanzania, and same-sex relationships are outlawed in Zambia. What have you said to the president and plan to say to other leaders on this trip about this crackdown on human rights?
I'll start. I have raised this issue, and let me be clear about where we stand. First of all, for the American press who are here, you know that a great deal of work in my career has been to address human rights issues, equality issues across the board, including as it relates to the LGBT community. And I feel very strongly about the importance of supporting the freedom and supporting and fighting for equality among all people, and that all people be treated equally. I will also say that this is an issue that we consider, and I consider, to be a human rights issue, and that will not change. The median age on the continent of Africa is 19. Think about what that means in terms of potential. Think about the fact that by 2050, 1 in 4 people occupying a place on Mother Earth will be on this continent, and what that means. The trip that I have taken to come here, being here, is about recognizing the incredible opportunity with a sense of optimism about what we do now and how it will impact the world going forward. So this trip and this relationship, yes, we are concerned with security. We are concerned with what is happening on the globe as a whole. We are clear-eyed about that. But this trip is motivated by the importance of the direct relationship between the United States and Ghana. And as I travel the continent, those countries.
When China comes and they present them a real platform, a real format. We're going to build infrastructures, we're going to build highways, we're going to build toll roads, we're going to take care of this and that and so forth for you guys to, continue our work and relationship. It's a business relationship. That's it. This is what we're loaning you. This is the interest. That's it. When the U.S. comes, they come with stipulations. Well, the first thing Kamala Harris says is our main focus is the human rights issues, as if Ghana has human rights issues, but the U.S. doesn't. So we have human rights issues, and particularly for laws for the LGBTQ community. And it's kind of confusing because in these African countries, that's not an issue for them. That's an issue for the U.S. That's the issue for Europe and the Western world. But that's not an issue for many, many of these countries. The Arab countries, even some most Asian countries, they don't support that lifestyle, but U.S. doesn't bring this up in order to trade with them. Only in the African communities, African countries is where they're trying to present this to. So our question, or trying to figure out, is there a place for Black people who have a certain level of consciousness, that want to have a certain level of freedom, but if you are
if you have that particular lifestyle choice, it poses a problem because of the differences of the value system, right? And that's really, where we're leading into this, because being neutral in this particular subject matter, and doing so, we regardless, I'm a Black person, she's a Black person, we're from America, we have been experienced in the American cultural society, and we know that there are disadvantages of current day and of historical past, right? That seem to, just continue on and on and on and on. You know the story, all together, what it's all about. And so we love ourselves as being black, and we love our black brothers and sisters, and we understand, wanting to come up from under that particular cultural society and wanting to reconnect and return back home, if you will, right? But there are lifestyle choices that, getting in the way. And so what do you do? What do you do if you're in that situation, right? What do you do? So here's a quick story, right? We recently went to Kenya, as you know, right? And we met some wonderful individuals. We were enjoying ourselves poolside, and two wonderful, beautiful young ladies who were there. My wife was engaged in conversation with them, and the dialogue and the discussion was about getting up from under the American cultural society and them wanting to make that bold move, as we have and many others have, in relocating to the continent of Africa, right? Beautiful. So another young lady comes up, and this particular young lady that does come up is more of a masculine type, I'll put it that way, right? And it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to know the lifestyle choice of this particular individual. However, she was introduced as a longtime good friend of the family. But even so, we engaged in a very in-depth conversation and dialogue with this particular individual, right? And I and my wife, we saw them all as our sisters, right? Didn't mean, anything either way, right? So we didn't think much of it after having departed from them. But as we turned and completing the conversation, turned away, the initial sister comes back to us. And she said, listen, I have to share something with you. The young lady that I introduced you to is not just a family friend. She is actually my wife. And we were wanting to be careful in sharing that because we don't know how it is received and or perceived here in specifically at that point Kenya, but also on the continent of Africa, because at that point they didn't know where they may want to actually move. And that brings us to this, like, you having individuals who are sincere and they're affected all the same, just like anybody else, of the occurrences that take place in the American society as being black. However, their lifestyle choice does not merge or fit into where they are wanting to go, which for many of us as black people is a safe haven. Africa is a safe haven, right? So already outside of that lifestyle choice, we as black people already have to question ourselves, is there a place for us to where we can be fully, completely accepted?
So you got to understand, though, Africa is laid back. It's morally, it's morals, it's religions, there's traditions, and it's very, very it's very family oriented that way. Everything is about the community, the village, the family. So as I even said to one of the young ladies, when she was like, how does Rhonda receive that? And I'm explaining to her, I said, listen, most African countries, you're going to see two ladies holding hands, two men holding hands, walking. You'll see hugs. My husband styles are that you'll see men rubbing each other's back and all kinds of stuff. It's a free range of showing love and expression. So, and the rights is for individuals. It's not a right because of your sexual preference or because you're married or you're single. The rights is for the people in general. So it really wouldn't matter to anybody on the continent what you choose to do behind closed doors. It's those that are, and I think you did some research where you're out trying to force them, make a law for us. Let us get married in your country. Let us, there's no marital rights versus single rights in Rwanda or any of the African countries that I've studied. So I don't even understand the fight too much, but if it was just, I want to move to Africa and be me and be free, and that's who you are, do so. But keep in mind, there's quite a lot of countries that once it's found out that you are homosexual, it's punishable by death. Quite a few African countries that way. If it's not by death, there's quite a few that you will get prison time.
A long-term prison time.
Long-term prison time. And that's their right. That's their right. And it's not our right to come over and say, we want to live in this country. Our DNA says we're from this country, and now you have to support my lifestyle. That's your choice. That's not what they have to do. We have two different ways to look at it. Of course, you want to have basic human rights, and you will. But are you going to have rights because you're LGBTQ, because you're gay, lesbian? No, you're not going to have rights, not on this continent. There's no separate rights for sexual preference. There just isn't any. So let's look at some of the videos of some of the other countries and what they're saying about how they're going to handle the situation, or if they're not even going to deal with it because it's not an issue for them.
Uganda's parliament has passed a bill which would criminalise people who identify as LGBTQ, with those found guilty facing up to 10 years in prison. Under the proposed legislation, friends, family and members of the community would have a duty to report individuals in same-sex relationships to the authorities. Homosexual acts are already illegal in the East African country, but the bill seeks to go further and criminalise people on the basis of their sexual identity. The bill passed with widespread support in Uganda's parliament.
In our country, we will have our morals. We will protect our children. And we are making this law. We are making this law for ourselves. We are making this law for our children. We are making this law for the children of our children. This country will stand firm. And once it passed, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, we are going to reinforce the law enforcement officers to make sure that homosexuals have no space in Uganda.
I know you're busy with time, and I have a couple of areas I just need to dwell on. On the question of human rights, on the question, for example, of same-sex rights, never mind same-sex marriage or anything like that that might be in the future, for want of a better word, gay rights, the overturning of laws against homosexuality. Can you promise me today that you will do that?
I'm a constitutionalist. The current provision in the Constitution forbids same-sex marriages and uphold that until that issue in our country is not an issue of the political party.
Not same-sex marriage. I'm talking about same-sex relationships. Never mind, we can put marriage to side. I'm talking about same sexual activity.
In our current constitution, it is banned.
Are you going to lead a campaign?
No, I will not lead a campaign.
Why not?
Those people who want that are the people who must canvass for such things, so that if they're able to win majority in amending the constitution, they would amend it. But it's not my duty on that issue to say I want to campaign for this. No. It's my duty to obey my constitution.
Correct.
I would not be persuaded to violate my constitution. Currently, my constitution says what I have said. But the constitution does not forbid people with different opinions. They must canvass for the opinions which they have.
So I'm asking for your opinion, both as a man and as president. Are you in favor of changing the constitution on that issue?
No, I am not. It's never a priority in Zimbabwe to deal with that issue. During 2013, when everybody was able to canvass, those who canvassed for that position lost. We go by the majority view of our people. And currently, the majority view is what I am stating.
I've said this before, and let me in conclusion stress again that it will not be under the presidency of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo that same-sex marriage will be legal. That same-sex marriage will be legalized in Ghana. It will never happen in my time as president. Let me repeat, it will never happen in my time as president.
The mistake of Western countries, they are the ones who are provoking, because they are really, the English word is insufferable. You can't put up with their nonsense, because nobody concentrates so much on homosexuals. Nobody is hunting them. But because they come and want to force us to say homosexuality, oh yeah, that's how you get now a backlash. They are the ones who are provoking all this.
I want to talk to you about a specific, human rights situation in parts of Africa and including in your own country. You yourself gained worldwide attention a few years ago when you said there was, quote, no room for homosexuality in Kenyan society. I want to know whether you still stand by that.
We have Kenyan law, we have Kenyan constitution, we have our tradition, we have our customs. We will continue to respect other people's customs as they respect our customs and our tradition. I am very clear that we respect everybody and what they believe in, but we also have what we believe in, and we expect to be respected for what we believe in.
Will a Ruto administration crack down, like many other leaders in Africa, on the homosexual LGBTQ community? Or will you allow them their human rights and their civil rights?
We do not want to create a mountain out of a molehill. This is not a big issue for the people of Kenya. When it becomes a big issue for the people of Kenya will make a choice. As it is now, we are grappling with 5 million young people who do not have jobs, 4 million people who are hungry, and that is my concern. That is the focus of the people of Kenya at the moment. When the issue you have discussed about homosexuality and the rights of LGBT will come, the people of Kenya will make a choice, and we will respect the choice of the people of Kenya. For now, Christian Amanpo, let us focus on the real issues that affect our people.
This issue of imposing on us their queer culture.
What do you mean by queer culture?
Queer culture, look, how do you see, Adam, as we sit here, you want a partner, right? You want a partner. Then you just look at this man with his dry head.
Instead of cooking.
Yeah, you see this man with his dry head and say that man to man. Or you see Saka and you say that you want to marry Saka. It's not acceptable in any part of our African culture.
According to their culture, sexuality is a choice.
Fantastic. So keep it in your culture. Keep it in your land. Why are you imposing it on other people that is not part of their culture? If you are a Ghanaian, you are a Nigerian, and you want to enjoy your homosexuality life, jump into the countries that will tolerate you. Within our culture, it's not permissible. I have not seen any African or black man in any of the Western countries jump in to say that you have to legitimize the issue of polygamous marriage. Because in their part, it's not acceptable. And you don't see blacks jumping and saying that because it's acceptable within our culture and our traditions, we want it to be a universal problem or a universal solution so that men across the globe can decide that they can marry. Have you seen that being promoted anywhere? So why are they imposing on us what we consider as an abnormality? When people are abnormal, you grant them compassion. You want to heal them. And so where we sit in our cultural settings, we see homosexuality as an abnormality and that they need compassion and they need to be healed. We don't see it as a right. So for Kamala Harris to come and sit in Ghana and be telling us that homosexuality is a right, and President Akufo-Addo saying that we will consider those rights, President Akufo-Addo is running away.
So from what we are hearing as we, research and listen to the positions from the many African leaders and the governments of these particular African countries, is pretty much like my wife was saying. You know, it's they don't necessarily, well, for one, let's say they view it as un-African because it's contrary to the value system. You know, as it relates to man and woman, it is just that. That is how it is deemed, and it is understood that, you know, in any form of relationship, and as it relates to family, it is man, woman, child, children. Okay, that is of their African, traditional African value system, right? And then from that, they have that has been written into their actual law, right? Their constitutional law, which very clearly stipulates that, you know, this is
big old bee. We both were in yellow, so I'm just convinced they're going to try to pollinate me.
That this is absolutely what they stand on, and they stand by, and anything contrary to that, it is against that particular law, and they will enforce it. Okay? Now, here's the interesting thing, right? A lot of these African countries, their laws, this one in particular was something that was set up and established during the colonial periods, that the British, I think in most of the countries, the British colonies presented and stipulated that there shall not be any of that type of activity, right? Which is interesting because I don't know that was an issue for them to be able to have to put that into law, but nonetheless, they stood on that, and they're still standing on that.
They were not just colonizing, but also enforcing Christianity onto the people as well.
Right. So within the traditional Christian moral values, that is something that they stand on as well. So that does make sense. Additionally, what we're finding is that these individuals are not, again, as my wife was presenting, they are not wanting to, those who have chosen that lifestyle, to be exhibitionists, if you will, to openly and publicly display that this is who they are, this is the lifestyle they have chosen, and they've used the words as far as recruiting, and you know, trying to encourage individuals to become or to nurture, you know, that within them. This is things that they're like, you know what, that all of that is something that they completely frown upon, and they will enforce the law if in fact there's an infraction of it. So again, what happens? What do you do? How do you? And I'm sincerely presenting this, right? Because you have what is considered intersectionality, right? And I like to use James Baldwin as a great example. Here's a man, one of the most brilliant of us that we were able to produce, and he was a phenomenal author, novelist, playwright, but yet also a strong vocal activist, black activist, as well as intellectual. In addition to all of that, he was homosexual, he was gay. Yet he chose, however, understanding the complexities of the disadvantages and inequality of both being black and homosexual, it appears as though he chose to stand more on voicing the concern of the black experience, of the troubles of being a black man and or woman in America. And very rarely or seldom do you hear him speak in terms of being a black homosexual in that particular fight. So you have compounded situations and issues, but he had to make a choice. I'm thinking, right? And even though there's one book that does speak of that, Giovanni's Room, from his own words, he said even though he characterized this individual as a homosexual, it wasn't about homosexuality. It was, in fact, still about, as a black person, in his or her his experience. Anyway, so I think that, he for me becomes that symbol, if you will, in dealing with this particular subject matter and this topic. And how do you, as a black man or woman, deal with the choice making, understanding the complexities, the compounded situation of being a black man or woman in America, as well as homosexual? What do? Do you forego and fight against your lifestyle choice so that you can live in a cultural society where you can, not be subjected to the things that you're subjected to in the American cultural society? Or do you try to fight a fight that it seems to be a losing one? Because it doesn't appear as though these African countries or leaders are budging at all. They are not budging at all. Even with Uganda, it appears as though America is looking to, hit them with some sanctions, and they're like, we don't care.
Yeah, they like, listen, we don't need the Western we don't need your money anymore. We don't need your aid. Your aid was crippling us because of the stipulations that you put on these countries. They don't want to deal with you anymore. And so your lifestyle choices and your rules is not going to influence their decision on who they trade with. So it's really an interesting topic, and it's an interesting situation, because regardless of what or how you feel as an individual, that is not going to persuade the rights of the land.
Not.
And when you move to a particular country, you must follow the laws of that land, or there's consequences. So you need to know that. You definitely need to know that. Human rights issues are different on the continent than there is in the States. The human rights, like one of the leadership was saying, for us, human rights is getting proper education, making sure people have adequate food, making sure everyone has medical care and hospital care. Talking about one's sexuality is not a human rights issue for my country. You'll hear that a lot with the leadership here. So even the definitions of human rights is different depending on where you are. And you have to be willing to accept that human rights. And it was hard for us, well, hard for me and a lot of people in my family. You're hearing and they say you're coming to the continent and we love animals. We love dogs. We're like, if we could be vegetarian, we'd be a part of PETA. But you come to the continent and you hear that there's certain countries where they eat dog. And one lady was explaining to us yesterday, in Ghana, you would walk down the street and go to the market and you'll see someone with a big bowl on their head with their legs up in the air.
A big platter.
A platter of dogs, dead dogs up in the air and just spread out. And I was imagining, I would have a heart attack. I would be so upset. I would probably go and fight them. And oh my God, I couldn't even imagine. That is, and there's no humane society for animals here. There's just none of that. But in the States, that's our culture. We're gonna fight. We fight for the rights of dogs more than they would fight for black people.
You already know.
That's the life we have in the States. And so here, a dog is food to some people. Not in Rwanda or the metro areas of Rwanda, but we do also here in the villages. Some do eat dog. If they're that hungry, they'll find a dog. And how you feel that should be against the law and that's inhumane and that's horrible. That's not the laws for that country.
And that's a strong point that a lot of these African leaders and the governments are making, is that, listen, this is we're a sovereign nation. This is our country, right? And don't tell us what to do. Don't tell us what to do. Don't come here, and telling us how we should govern, our nation and our country. And, they make the example of, like, we don't come there and try to tell you guys what to do. Because there's some things that, we approve of that you guys don't approve of, but we don't come to tell you and make you to try to do, to do it. We respect the fact that this is your land, this is your value system. It is what it is, right? And so, they hold that position as well. And going back to, what we were saying earlier, is, as it deals with building a relationship, U.S. to Africa, China to Africa, Russia to Africa. The differences that, you know, we're seeing and they're voicing is that when these African countries build relations with these other countries, they don't interfere with their sovereignty. They don't try to impose upon them, this is how you should live, if in fact we do this trading or build this relationship together. And so a lot of the African leaders are strongly standing up and voicing that. They're saying, like, listen, every time we sit in front of you, you're always trying to tell us what to do. You know, we don't need you to tell us what to do. We know what to do. We know how to govern our country and so forth and so on. And so, you know, this is the situation, right? This is a very, I would imagine, you know, for individuals who are in this particular dilemma, this is a very hard question that I believe they would have to ask themselves in their decision making and wanting to relocate and move here to the continent. So
we definitely want to hear your thoughts. But listen, y'all, why y'all be fighting in the comments? I feel like y'all be going for blows. Listen, let's be a little tactful. We want to learn as much as possible from you guys. You know, we've been reading, we read every comment. We take some of the comments and research. We got some great researchers that follow our channel that always gives us a whole book to read, and we read every part of it. And so we definitely want to hear your voice and understand your point of view. Again, we're just being the neutral. We're just relating the information today. We're not taking a particular stance on this topic today on this video. So, but how do you feel about it? And is that a deciding point for you? Are you looking for a country that accepts everything, everybody, every situation? Or are you looking for a country that is backed by morals and have a strong family foundation on, and they're not into the alternative lifestyles? How do you feel about it?
Well, thank you so much, as always, for allowing us to share with you. And as my wife said, we'd love to hear from you, see what your thoughts are, and hopefully, you know, something that we have shared would have shed some light, and you have a takeaway from it. And until next time, peace and blessings.